Hello everyone, my name's Tom Hollands. I'm the Innovation and Technical Director at Raynor Foods. Raynor Foods are also leading um, a consortium to deliver something called the Digital Sandwich. The Digital Sandwich is quite a complex and big project, and I won't be able to do full justice to it in 20 minutes. So I'm going to give you some good highlights and give you some good intros into what the project, what we're trying to do, the challenges that we're facing, the different technologies that we'll be deploying, and some of the benefits and costs associated with the project as well. So firstly, I think it's good to give you a bit of overview of some of the food industry challenges that's coming up or we're approaching us in the future. And I think that will give some context to the project. I'm then going to cover what the digital sandwich is, some highlights, and also some of our partners who are claiming grants and some partners that are not claiming grants. And then I've got a quick slide, just a little description of what blockchain is. And then I'm going to talk to you about some of the benefits that we'll be looking to get from the digital sandwich, and also some of the costs or disbenefits associated with that as well. I'm going to be mentioning Bullwhip Effect and throughout this presentation. So I've got a special little slide to just describe what that is to the uninitiated. And then I'm just going to end what would happen if this technology was adopted nationally for UK PLC. So first, what challenges are facing our industry at the moment? For us, we're seeing increased nuanced data demands coming to us from our customers, and then having to push that down the supply chain, which reduces headspace. So for an example, if one of our customers came to us and they wanted information about a particular ingredient, where it came from, or some further details that we don't hold, we have to pass that query back down the supply chain. And it could go through 4 or 5 links before it gets the correct answer. And then the answer then needs to come back up the supply chain. So a very simple request could take up 8 hours or so on the supply chain's time, trying to deal and trying to answer these questions. A part of that is the security in these data exchanges as well. Sometimes we're sharing quite sensitive data, and it needs to be done in a secure fashion. Another big challenge we're facing is the Bullwhip Effect, which increases waste and cost throughout any supply chain, but most notably food, because food is perishable. Another challenge, enhanced and speed of traceability. There is increasing expectations from the end user on the provenance of the ingredient of the food that they're buying. They would like to know which corner of the field Daisy the cow was grazing in. They'd like to know whether any palm oil comes from sustainable plantations throughout the world. And they want more information, more detailed information, to understand more about whereabouts their food is coming from. As part of that, I think this is being driven further by COVID as well. There is an increase in food fraud and vulnerability risks in our supply chains. The more complex they are, the less visibility that you have, the more vulnerable they are to fraud. Part of this as well is management by exception, where some food manufacturers are quite good at gathering data. And of course, we have to gather and save more and more data as we're getting more and more nuanced data demands. So we've got bigger and bigger data sets, but trying to go through those data sets to identify patterns to enable you to manage by exception is increasingly becoming more challenging. Food industry tends to have disjointed systems, mostly pen and paper based or Excel. If they do have software solutions, sometimes it's not all within ERP system, and there could be a specification system here. There could be a new product development system here and a complaint management system here, not really interconnected, they're really embedded in with each other. Our industry is also facing a growing skills gap and growing costs, especially for labour and also materials as well. And we also have the climate change emergency that's bearing down on us, and it is impacting the supply chain at the moment. So with that in mind, what is the digital sandwich? The digital sandwich is a £10 million project with £4 million worth of government funding coming through the Made Smarter Challenge Fund. It is a 2-year project. It's UK-based project, and it's looking to exploiting a number of new and emerging technologies, such as artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain, zero trust, networking, the Internet of Things, the Internet of Virtual Things, tracking technologies, digital twins, and all these technologies come into the same place. They're being fused together, and this is termed digital fusion. So you don't only have one bit of digital technology, you've got lots of bits that are built on top, built into it, and built underneath it as well. The output of this project is a major piece of software, a platform that will allow any food and drink businesses to connect online and allows them to share valuable data. And through sharing this data, will then create very valuable insights and give you directions of new ways of thinking and new ways of doing. Critically, this platform is not aimed at big co's, it's aimed at SMEs who don't usually have access to this type of technology. And at the end of the project, Raynor Foods will become a UK demonstrator for this technology. So you can come and visit the factory and you can see the digital sandwich in action. And there's key parts of this. One is the blockchain and supply chain, and the other part is our factory, where we will effectively have a digital twin of our process, of the products, of the materials it goes through, and it will have a sensor mesh throughout all of it, because we're trying to move away from humans putting data onto the blockchain and relying more on sensors and sharing data across the supply chain, trying to reduce the amount of human intervention and therefore human error as well. Now we have a number of partners. We have a lot of partners. And here are all the partners that are claiming grants as part of our consortium. So the consortium is being led by us, Raynor Foods, and we're a sandwich manufacturer based in Chelmsford. And we supply product both public and private sector, mostly schools, colleges, hospitals. We do airlines, events, catering, and other things like that. We have Sweetbridge, which is a company initially based in America, but they have a subsidiary here. We have IMS Evolve, which is part of Dell. We have R3, which is made up chiefly of international banks, and they're looking at driving through new technologies, especially blockchain, to help facilitate finance. We have the University of Lincoln, who are leading on the artificial and machine learning. We have the University of Exeter, who's supporting that, but also helping us understand the Bullwhip Effect and how we can create algorithms or AIs to try and mitigate that impact across the supply chain. We have CHEP, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. We have Net Foundry, subsidiary of Tata Steel. We have the Digital Catapult. We have Industria, and we also have CrossPay as well. So as you probably get a flavour, this is a very complex, very big project with a number of different players. And these are all the people that are able to access the grant money. And then we have these kind organisations who are there to help support us. They're not grant claiming partners per se, but they're a key part of delivering the project. We have Microsoft, we have our supply chain, KPMG, we have HMRC, of course, we have the Food Standards Agency, which are really helping us around the regulation and also data trust as well, and the data trust frameworks. We have the Food and Drink Federation, we have the KTN Food Group, got the DEFRA Food Sector Council, we have the Institute of Food Science and Technology, and we also have the Organic Cotton Accelerator as well. So very briefly, what is blockchain? I'm sure you've heard of this, definitely mentioned in the news. You've heard of Bitcoin and DLTs and other acronyms like this. Effectively, what blockchain is, it's a read-only data set where every entry is traceable to source. If all partners are using the same protocol, it allows to defrag redundant data and blockages. It doesn't corrupt. It allows you to interrogate data at speed. It is very secure, and it is permission-based. By permission-based, I mean, as you as an entity joining the blockchain, it is up to you what data you want to share. But I will say, what we're finding out, the more data that you're able to share, the more data sets that you can provide access to, the better the analysis and the more meaningful information that can be pulled from those data sets that benefits not only yourself, but also the supply chain and ultimately the end user as well. So delivering these, the digital sandwich project, what type of benefits are we looking at exploiting from this? Firstly, a substantial reduction in the bullwhip effect, which I'll cover shortly. Firstly, we'll be able to have sustainability metrics, real sustainability metrics, where you can examine all the energy, all the fuel, all the fossil fuels used in productions of projects, products and delivery of products as well. You'll be able to increase your innovation capabilities because you have much better insight. You'll be able to understand more of the particular customer needs and demands, how the different raw materials flow your supply chain, where the bottlenecks are, where the things that are creating cost for your supply chain. It will allow you to free up your resources because I can connect my supply chain to one another as well, rather than the customer going directly to me and wanting to know where Daisy the cow was grazing. They can access it directly through the blockchain, and they can go to the primary producer themselves and they can gather the data, or they can gain access to the data or the information that they want to know as well. Authenticity and traceability is a click of a button. I can have an artificial intelligence doing mass balance non-stop across my supply chain. So for example, if 1 ton of organic tomatoes went in and then 10 tons of organic tomatoes came out, what happened there? The blockchain can flag that up for attention. So it can help automatic mass balance and authenticity as well. Because I have AIs working in the background, that will allow my team and to manage by exception as well, so they can help add more value to the business rather than shifting through lots and lots of data and trying to look for a needle in a haystack. Access to this depth and richness of data, trustworthy data, will allow policymakers to will inform policy. You get to see real hand what changes you may do and what impact that has through the blockchain as well. And that's, of course, if permission is open and the data is shared. It will allow for a significant reduction in agency costs. It will give real-time visibility and modeling. So one of the AIs that we have discussed about deploying is we could track, for example, ham all the way from the manufacturer, all the way from the supplier to us, to the customer, to the end user. And we can then model microgrowth for pathogens as it passes through the supply chain. So if it falls out the chill chain for a period of time, rather than saying that consignment, we've got to throw it away, it's out of control. No, we don't. We can use the modeling and we can say, actually, all we need to do is we need to reduce the shelf life by X amount of time rather than throwing it away. And that can be done on the blockchain so everyone knows instantaneously what has happened. Finance, insurance, and other benefits. Once you're connecting up your supply chain, suddenly you could have economies of scale. You could look at pulling your resources together. So for example, lots of people are using handheld gels at the moment. Well, okay, the blockchain can work out how much of the hand sanitizer gel is being used, what the current price is being paid, and then perhaps even tender out that to others to try and get the best price or so, and tap into existing supply chains to achieve that. Those things are possible if you're interconnected onto this platform. And one of the other big benefits, of course, is transparency as well. For any entity that is on it, the transparency does depend on the permissions that are possible, what data sets you give access to. as I said before, the more transparent you are with your supply chain, the bigger the benefit for you. But with all benefits or system changes, you have things you want, benefits, and things you don't want, or disbenefits, or costs. So obviously, it requires also supply chain partners to be linked, to be on the blockchain, to get these benefits. Secondly, conformity and non-conformity. These areas are visible. They can be seen, assuming that you are transparent in the data that you share. There will be a requirement for human transcription due to legacy issues for a period of time. Not everyone can flip immediately onto a digital equivalent in the virtual space. There'll be some equipment which you can't connect up on the IoT, which will require some human interface for a while yet. But these are legacy issues which over a period of time will be solved. We're trying to remove the issue with human error. Sensors are required. Sensors either for temperature, humidity, for motion, vision. These all have to be connected through the IoT, the Internet of Things. So you're taking real data, trustworthy data from a source, and you're using that to inform decision making. Very important is having a trusted data source. If you put rubbish data into the blockchain, you will get rubbish data out of it. And so the data sources must be trustworthy, especially if it's regarding finance as well. There is a verification activity that will be required still, just to check that there's no errors that could be creeping into a blockchain. Once you have visibility on your blockchain, then risk will be displaced. It will either be displaced to the primary producer, the first input, or to the last output on the supply chain. And that probably means that regulatory functions would focus on those two sides, because everything else in the middle is transparent, at least to HMRC and to the FSA. And also, a cost could also be transparency as well. The bullwhip effect. What is the bullwhip effect? Well, if there's a forecast for the customer of approximately 10 units, so for example, we think that the corner shop is going to sell 10 BLTs next Tuesday, then the corner shop, just in case, would order additional stock, safety stock, so it doesn't stock out. It doesn't want to miss a sale. So the distributor, they have to account for that fluctuation, but also in their own calculation comes to MOQs or bulk discounts, because they need to maintain their stock levels for their customer, make sure their customer doesn't stock out. They also have to make sure that they don't stock out for their other customers. And so when you get to the manufacturer then has to produce 40 units, 40 BLTs. So that will help reduce their cost and ensure a timely delivery. And this phenomenon is called the bullwhip effect. So by the time you get back to the primary producer or the farmer, they could be growing 50% more food than what is actually required in that supply chain. And this is wasted cost, wasted emissions, wasted food. And this represents a significant cost to the food industry, but also any supply chain as well. But also for the food industry, of course, you have all these emissions that are tied up in this wasted food as well. If blockchain was adopted and scaled nationally, it would allow us to optimize and simplify national or cross-border trade, sending product to Northern Ireland, sending things to the EU, which I'm sure lots of the listeners are having issues with at the moment. Trying to gather all that information for the export health certificates would be done at a click of a button, and would make it seamless, and would allow the exporter and importer to demonstrate their due diligence in a swift and trustworthy manner. Deploying this technology will also increase productivity by approximately around 10% as well. Through reducing the bullwhip effect, would reduce industry waste by approximately 14% as well. And in totality, this could equate to £2.8 billion in gross value added for the food industry within 10 years. And that is just for the food industry. This tech can be deployed with any supply chain, whether it's pharma, aerospace, automotive, it will work in the same place. So the future is not so much about big co versus big co. In the future, it will be supply chain versus supply chain. Because the more agile your supply chain is, the more it cuts out the waste that it's producing, the more leaner it becomes, the more competitive that it is. And then it becomes a battle between supply chains rather than big co's as well, facilitated through using this technology. The future's digital. Thank you very much for your time.